that too, which yeah. That was hilarious trying to do that little video. How many takes?
Like 6.
I have to figure out how to get a hold of those from her, Jason.
I know, I'm afraid.
No, you guys are lucky because I was doing it through BombBomb, so I had to hit re-record.
Oh yeah.
So they were deleted.
Those bloopers would be bad.
Yes, it would. Well, it's getting to be about that time.
Yes, it is. Let's roll. You want to?
Yeah. Whoa.
So I got people joining.
We do.
We can wait a couple more minutes.
So that you know what's interesting to me about this topic is that it's hard to get training on it. And it's really hard to get training that's specific to real estate and the stuff that we go through, let alone specific to the lake.
Oh, man.
So, you know, when we put this together, we had to make our own up. So based on the crazy stuff that we see.
Yeah, and I'm afraid, I mean, it's going to be, there's so much that we could talk about. We may end up having to do another class on this with.
Okay, money's here. I love that.
Before you logged on, Jason, I was saying that Mel put together a bunch of notes and we weren't able to go over any of them. And then she's reading them to me this morning. I'm going, oh, that's a great point. Oh my, that's a good point. Oh. So you're right. I think we might have to do another class, and that's fine. We should do this. I mean, we should do this topic we should talk about quarterly too, because everybody has a different spin and there's just too much.
Yeah, I think contracts in this class would be great to do quarterly, especially if we make this class with you guys where you bring back maybe some negotiations that you recently faced too. That would be kind of cool.
Well, the agents are so good, you know, our agents are so good that by the time I get involved, it's usually like you got to scratch your head, and I got to phone friends like Jason, and you know, so there as many things as these agents do, and the buyers and sellers we deal with, there is some crazy stories, but that's what helps everybody, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We ready?
Ready.
Let's start.
Jason, take it away.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Kaylin was, hey, we're excited you guys are here. Looks like we've got an awesome class, as Jeff was just talking about. You know, this was one of these classes that we had to just kind of put stuff together. There's no formal set script that we're teaching off of. We didn't have any really anything. We just had to kind of come up with some of our own stuff. But we feel like it was really needed. It's something that, like Jeff said, it's not easy to talk about. It's not easy to teach, but gosh, it's so valuable. And there's so many different aspects of it. Don't get lost during this class. What I mean by that is if there's things that we don't get to, don't lose heart. We'll probably end up, I can imagine us doing another one of these classes. So at some point through this, there's a lot of material. So it's not going to be probably open up for quite as much discussion, at least early on. But what we do want you guys to do is type, you like my typing, type us some questions if you have specific questions you want us to cover, and we will try to get through everything just as quick as we can. So excited you guys are on here. So
it's something that I think is just so important that we constantly work on too, because it's where we bring the most value to our clients, and it really how we handle you know, all of the different negotiations kind of sets the stage for what our colleagues think of us, and you know, it really helps us bring value.
I was going to say, it is a huge value proposition when you're talking to clients, whenever you're communicating with clients. It's something that not everybody gets a chance to do. And whenever you look at, you know, that we average 18 sales per agent in our company, it takes some agents 10 years to get to that, unfortunately. And so it's not necessarily about how long you've been in the business. You're getting an opportunity to do a lot of negotiating. And one of the things that we're going to talk about pretty early on is it's a lot of times people just think of negotiations as Well, it's the price. You know, I'm negotiating the best price. There's a lot more that goes into negotiation and goes into a deal than just the price. And so we're going to get into that.
So what is negotiation? This was a definition, wasn't it, Jason?
Yep, just a definition. It's just a process of managing conflict between parties who have a competing interest. And so everybody needs to know, I think everybody knows what negotiation is, but we have different interests, but we want to get to a point where we're bringing those interests together. So
I think that what you said, you know, as we get into this, what you said early on, Jason, is really important to highlight. A lot of times people think that the negotiation is the writing of the contract, the negotiating of the price, and getting the contract accepted. And, you know, that is for sure a part, but the negotiations go on and on and on. And we're going to go through specific examples of how often we're negotiating and when and why and how that works. But I think it's important to think about how the tone of the negotiation is set early. And that tone that's set early can impact the process, how you go through the process, and the outcome of the whole deal.
It really requires a lot of self-awareness. You know, we feel like Jeff and I, as we were talking, a lot of agents just don't have a lot of self-awareness. They think they're one way, but they negotiate a different way. And so it's going to take some honest self-reflection, or we want you guys to walk away, kind of your homework to walk away from this is to start working on your own self-awareness and think about where you fit into your negotiating style. What do I do? What are kind of my blind spots? I would challenge you guys to find somebody that you have a strong enough relationship with that you can take some honest feedback and ask somebody, you know, where do you think I fall into this? And you may really like what you hear, you may not. And I know I've got people in my life, Jeff's one of them, that'll be really honest with me and tell me, well, you're an idiot, you blew it on that. And those are important people to have. So,
hey, it's that is, you do the same thing, and that's not the easy thing to hear, but boy, we can learn a lot from that. So thinking along those lines, thinking about yourself first, let's just talk about some differences in negotiation styles, because you can relate the deals that you've been in, the clients that you've worked with, buyers and sellers and other agents. You can kind of see who fits within whatever style. But we also want you to think about, what is your style? What do you normally do? And is there room to change or improve that? So some of the different styles: competing. I win, you lose. That's where we were trying to go. We were both, we were definitely competing styles in our little scripts, pounding our hands and pointing our fingers. And as Jeff Winter said earlier, you know, sometimes that's done. We don't get a chance to sit, you know, right in front of each other and do it. But we have the ability to do that via text, via email, on the phone. I mean, I see a lot of that competing, and I think it just goes with the nature of the realtor. You know, entrepreneurial, self-starters. We're going to talk about personality types. And so that's probably a very common one.
Yep. Very common. And you see it, unfortunately, often in real estate. The next one is avoiding. It's just I lose, you lose. It's kind of that person that they don't like conflict. And so maybe they don't, they're hard to get a hold of. They're not answering your texts. They're not replying to, you know, they just kind of shell up, and that's a lose as well. It's a lot of times deals don't get done. Things fall through because there's not enough communication. We see a lot of lack of communication with somebody who does that.
Accommodating. You know, you win, I lose. So not the most aggressive personality, low assertiveness, similar to the avoiding style. They want to cooperate. They want to make everybody's life nice. I mean, I feel sorry for the avoiding and the accommodating when they hook up with a competing. So, yeah. But that
a lot
is
of times you see this whenever you get two people who have a relationship, you know, two agents who have a relationship, and one of them doesn't want to, you know, maybe offend the other one, or doesn't want to, you know, the relationship is more important than the deal. And although it can feel more, it can feel better than somebody who's a competitor or an avoider, it's still not a win for our clients. So compromising is the next one. A lot of people land here and they think that this is kind of where we want to be. I win some, you win some, you know, hey, let's split the difference. Let's just get the deal done really quick. It's medium assertiveness, medium cooperativeness, but really that's not the goal. Unfortunately, a lot of people land here. A lot of people think that that's the goal, but the real goal, the real negotiating style that we want to kind of get to is the last one. You want to talk on that, Jeff?
Collaborate. Yeah. I win, you win. High assertiveness, high cooperativeness. And the key is that this can be done without emotion. So it can be done in a respectful manner. Assertiveness is not the same as aggressive or being a bully. It can just be working on behalf of your client, but being respectful and cooperating with everything you need to cooperate with, so that it's an I win, you win. It is the best of the group. And sometimes, you know, there's a little mix, I think, of compromising and collaborating. And we see that a lot. And those are the ones that we want to highlight.
Yep. You know, the next slide, we're getting into personalities, and a lot of times personalities get confused with negotiating styles because certain personalities lend themselves to those styles, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to use that style. That doesn't mean that you're just going to be stuck in that rut. If you're self-aware and you understand what type of personality you are, if anybody's ever done one of the DISC profiles or one of the others, you can understand kind of what you are, so that you're self-aware and you make sure that you're not falling into one of those first four negotiating styles. But they do kind of go hand in hand. We're big on the DISC here.
Oh man, by the way, if you haven't done a personality profile, it is a great exercise. Just to give you an idea, the first time I did one years and years ago, I got it, and it was it's my own personality profile. I filled the sheet out, and so I'm looking at this report, and I got about a page in, and I said, "This is junk. This is not me. What is this thing talking about?" It's saying that, you know, that I do this and I do this and I do this. And boy, I didn't have to go very far. I went right to my wife and she goes, "Well, that's spot on." And so the self-reflection part of it is huge. Look, we all have parts of every component. We just all have tendencies that lean us one way or the other. The most important part about it is one isn't better than the other.
No.
There is not one style that a person should be or not. I mean, we have to remember that everyone is good. I mean, I take it back to a coach we hired. We hired a coach, and Mel and I hired this coach to fix everybody on our team. That was our goal. We hired this guy. We said, fix all these people because it's something's going on with these people here. You got to fix them. And the first thing he did was he created a safe space, and he talked to all of them, and he gave us all personality profiles. And then he took Mel and I off site like a week into it and said, "Hey, I got an eye opener for you. It's not about them. It's about you." And so we had to really self-discover, because once you figure out, you know, for me, I'm off the charts D. I'm off the charts D. I want, you know, if you look at it, D says priorities: getting immediate results, taking action, challenging self and others, motivated by power and authority, competition, winning, success. Fear, loss of control, being taken advantage and vulnerable. You'll notice self-confidence, directness, forcefulness, risk-taking, limitations, lack of concern for others, impatience, insensitivity. 10 years ago, I was like all of that last deal. And so it's good knowing who I was, because I didn't realize how I was affecting others within my own team, others I relied on every day. And so that was really eye-opening for me. And that's why I just think there's so much value in personality profiles in general, and understanding who you are and how the way you react and handle others, especially in times of negotiation, can really make them feel. So I get a little passionate about it, as you can see, but I think it's a big deal.
It is a huge deal. And like you said, there's no right or wrong. There's no like, oh gosh, he's going to make a great agent because he's a high D or he's a high I. We've seen great agents who fall in every single one of these categories. Again, as it relates to negotiating, we just want to make sure that we're self-aware so that we can make sure that we're not messing up our negotiating style.
Let's touch on just I went through D. The I is the influencer. The I is the life of the party. The I wants a crowd around them to tell a story to. They want social. I's there's a lot of salespeople that fall into I and D. The I, when you take a personality profile, is like a D in the fact that they may not be very good with respect to detail. They may not be drawn to, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's of a contract, but boy, are they great using emotion to sell and representing their clients using emotion. A D is a results driven. They're going to ask for the deal. They're going to ask for the close. A C is that bottom left, and the C is a detail person. The C wants everything to be perfect for their client. They want to make sure all the bases are covered and that everything is reviewed and that contract is absolutely perfect, which is great representing your client. It does sometimes slow the process down a little bit. The S is a stable, an S loves a family. They love to look at pictures of family. They want to make sure everybody's taken care of and make sure everybody's held up and comfortable with the decision. I mean, don't make the decision before you're comfortable. We've got 3 more houses to see. I know you love this one. Wait to write the contract until we see the other houses. So no matter where you are, there's pros and cons of every section. We just wanted to take the negotiation styles and then look at personality profiling, kind of see how you fit or question yourself and where you fit, and maybe look at some of the tendencies of the others to see how you relate to others and what you can do to improve your own style. I hope that's not too deep. I think
it's awesome. It's also really important that you understand who you're dealing with, who we're negotiating with, right? You have to understand if you're on a listing, who you're sitting across the table from, if you're in a contract negotiation. The other thing about a contract negotiation is it's not just about you and the other agent, is it? How many people are involved typically? How many personalities? There's at least 4. You got the buyer, the seller, both agents. And in a lot of cases, you got spouses, or maybe there's a trust, or there's multiple buyers, multiple sellers. So there can be a lot of different people that we're dealing with. And the more that you can understand each and every one of those personalities, the more that you can relate to them, the more you can understand, the more you can be empathetic. It's just a really, really powerful tool to be able to not only self-evaluate, but understand other people. Okay. Hey, Jeff, where can they go to get this? Because we can get it for free, right?
Kaylin just put it on the chat, and you can do one on Tony Robbins' website. And Kaylin also reminded me to just mention, nobody is just one of these. We all have parts of every one in us. We just have tendencies that jump out in times of stress or in times of, in different things that we do. So, it's good to know that we're all, we all have parts of these. We just have tendencies that are stronger in each dimension. So, all right, you want to keep going?
Yep.
Okay. So keeping in mind what the different negotiation styles are, and then how our personality and the personality of the people that we're working with in each deal relate, we wanted to talk about specific points where we negotiate a lot, and we want to share some stories about this, and then later we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls in negotiations specific to real estate that we see happen constantly, happen a lot. So you want to take us through some of these, Jason?
Yeah, so we've got, first, obviously, this is one that everybody hangs their hat on. It's the terms of the contract. And everybody loves to talk about price, but it's not always just about price, right? For some people, it's about time frame. For some people, it's about the contingencies. Maybe it's an appraisal. Maybe it's all the different things that we throw into the contract. Oftentimes we worry too much about price. And so one of the things we want to encourage you guys to do is, before you submit an offer, and there's an exception to this, and we'll get to that, but before you submit an option, make sure that you're talking to the listing agent. It's amazing how much information you can actually get from people sometimes. Some people will tell you exactly what you need to do, but ask them specific questions like, what's the most important thing to the seller? Sometimes it's not about price. Sometimes it's a specific day that they want to move on, or maybe they want to be able to stay in it for 60 days. There's lots of different things. And that becomes even more important when you're talking about, and we're going to get to this, multiple offers. There is kind of a caveat to that, or an exception to that. And I think there's a time not to call the listing agent. If there's a really hot property that comes on the market, and and we've seen how many multiple offers have we seen in the last week? I mean, it's just, there are some price points. And so sometimes
I bet it's a dozen in the last week we've been involved with, or more. It's crazy.
If you get to a hot property first, sometimes sending that offer right away, it's going to go more than list, sending that contract right away, and then calling them, hey, I just want to let you know, I sent you an offer. Here's the terms of it. So it's not giving them an opportunity to go and price shop. You give them a smaller amount of window to come back, and that's about the only time that I would not do that. And
Jason, that is such a good thing to bring up right now in today's market. And one thing I want to highlight on that is we start negotiating way before we ever write a contract, way before. Mm-hmm. Even if it's with our own clients. And here's what I mean by that. The reason they're here is to buy something. If we can identify the price range, the inventory, the area that they're shopping in that fits one of those criteria where it's going to be tough to find, and there's going to be multiple offers, and we're going to have to act fast, then we have to help educate that buyer on the specifics of that market way before they ever get into it, or they're going to lose multiple deals. They're going to be an emotional wreck. They're going to get to the point where they feel, how often have we seen people lose multiple contracts because they're carrying with them their expectations of a market that's not here? Does that make sense? I think that it's just as important for us to be able to recognize those things, fit them with the market that the buyers are looking at, and then help them understand what they're getting into. That to me is negotiation as well.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Sometimes you get a buyer who just has to have a little humble pie or understand that what you're talking about before they'll come in realistically. And so losing a couple can be a good thing. Other people, it's like a sign from God, maybe I shouldn't buy. So you want to try to set those expectations as early as you can, that, hey, we got to put our best foot forward. We do not want to, don't come back to me tomorrow and tell me you wish you would have offered more. And we're kind of getting into the multiple offer stuff, but man, those are good points, Jeff.
Well, I think it's something that we deal with every day. And it does make a difference on how your clients respond to the conditions of the market that they need to be aware of. So, and that is on the buyer and the seller side. You know, the same can be said for a seller that, you know, this property is probably going to have a challenge appraising. Something like that.
What happens in a contract, Jeff, in that time frame that a house is under contract, that, gosh, somebody's just been beating the crap out of somebody, you know, they've just been beating them down on price, they've been beating down them on everything, and then we get to inspections. You know, everybody forgets about inspections. They think it's a home run once we go under contract, but there's a lot of work to be done. And the inspections are a huge part of that negotiation process. Talk about that and just how that plays into the overall feel.
Well, you know, it's a condition of how the tone is set. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if I beat you up over and over and over, and if I beat the agent up, then, you know, we're gonna talk about this later as well. It's something that we see happens constantly. By the time you get to that inspection, and you're moving down that road of bully type negotiating style, you are wearing down every party that's involved, and it puts your client in a bad position. Is that what you're going to?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you get to the end of the deal, and all of a sudden they're fighting over $300, and the deal falls apart, or you have to cut your commission to hold it together. And so that's typically what happens whenever we forget about the inspections.
Negotiating inspections is such a big part. I mean, the negotiating of an initial contract and the initial terms, to me, is almost easier than the negotiating of the inspections, especially in today's market, because if you're in a hot price point and you're representing a buyer, and that other agent hasn't conditioned the seller for everything that's going to happen, the seller usually feels, and maybe sometimes they're in total control. And, you know, sometimes a buyer might feel like they've paid too much from the beginning on. So by the time you get to inspections, a buyer's kind of thought about it and they're not really happy. So they're really going to put it to them.
Yep.
So
the other thing is, we talk about expectations when you're talking to your buyer too. Sometimes buyers believe they're going to be buying a brand new home, and they're buying a $250,000 lakefront home in Osage Beach. Well, that's probably going to have some stuff they're going to have to just live with. They're not going to end up with a brand new home. And so being able to set those expectations of what the inspections are actually for.
Jessica just said on chat, it's important as a buyer's agent to encourage good vibes when going into inspections. A lot of times they're having buyer's remorse, they're unsure, they're nervous. Then you have an inspector walk through, they tear it apart, and it just, you know, all of a sudden they're super scared at that point and they're on the fence. I think that is a huge thing to be aware of in the beginning. And, you know, back to your personalities, Jason, I hate to beat it up, but if you're real driven and you're real, you know, if you're that person where you're very, very deal focused and you have conditioned the buyer to be deal focused, you can inadvertently put yourself into and them into a position where let's tear them apart, let's keep going, and sometimes it kills deals. So it's worth considering, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jess. Really good point. So we got multiple offers. What do you want to specifically cover here? We covered a little bit of it.
It's mostly, you know, it's mostly the on whatever side you're on, getting people ready, I think, and being respectful, but being able to have the conversations that need to be had right away. And you know, I had one that was a very close client, and they were looking at this property with their kids. Their kids were adults, and they were buying the property themselves. But we were sitting in the condo, and I knew that there were multiple offers, and we had mom and dad, and we had the kids there. And it was interesting to see the dynamic back and forth, because mom and dad wanted to protect the kids a little bit. And I said to them, I said, okay, here's the deal, guys. I understand where you're all coming from. Here's what you can't do. You cannot look at me and say, I wish you would have told me. So whatever we put forth on this deal, we know what's going to happen. Make sure it's an offer that you're willing to say, I gave it my best and I'm done. And those conversations need to be had in this market in certain price ranges, I think.
They need to be happening often, and they need to be happening before we make the offer, just to condition them, because there's certain. So what about, well, this isn't multiple offers. Never mind. We'll get to it later. So,
well, Jason, the only other thing is, if you're of a personality type where you might be an S and you might always just care deeply, I mean, and worry about potentially offending a client. You know, I've worked with a lot of agents that just, it's unbelievable their ability to care for their clients and look out for them. If you're that person, you might have a hard time having that conversation, because you might catch yourself worrying about them overpaying.
Right. Well, I can't comp it out, Jeff. I can't justify this price. Well, in 6 months, you might be able to. You know, a year ago, you couldn't justify a lot of these prices. You can sure justify them now. The market is going up. We have an inventory. There's a tightness of inventory in certain price points. So,
Jason, we had a personal experience with that. With the first property we ever bought outside of the Lake of the Ozarks for ourselves, we had a great agent, super nice guy. We found the property. We had been looking for years. We'd lost out on 2 multiple offers. We found this property on line, called him, said, please look at it in the morning. We want to make an offer. He went and looked at it. He said, you don't want to make an offer. I said, why not? He said, it'll never appraise. I said, I don't care. He said, what? And I said, it's where we want to buy. We've looked for 2 years. We've lost 2 deals. We want to buy there. And because we needed the investment, we needed the rental side. We had researched the market. He said, I can find you a better deal. I said, it's where we want to buy. I said, Mike, stop. I want to make an offer. I am going to make an offer. Write this up. He goes, I'm just telling you, it's not going to appraise. I said, I'm just telling you, I don't care.
Jeff, if you weren't a high D, though,
I know
he would have been working with somebody who was a C or an S. I mean, there's a good chance that you would have not made the offer. You would have been upset. Maybe in a month after not finding somebody, you go with another agent. I mean, that's what happens whenever we're not in tune with what our agents.
Here's the ironic part of that conversation. We made the offer. They verbally accepted. Another offer came in. They took the other offer. Like 4 days later, the other people backed out. The seller came back to us, and that's the only way we got the house. If we wouldn't have pushed that hard that day, we definitely would have been out. That's a true story. So, and that happens all the time.
Jeff, do you want to read what Mel said in the chat?
I'm surprised she's not talking. In a multiple offer situation, when working with a buyer, I think it's important that you tell them it's okay. They're looking for your expertise in this market. It's typical. And I let them know up front, here's what is most likely going to happen. Most people will offer full price. That won't cut it. You have to go higher and do the best on your terms as well. That's a big point. We don't just negotiate price, we negotiate terms. Ask the listing agent, do they need more time to close? Is faster better? Prepare your offer to the best that you can that will appeal to the seller the most. It may not appraise either. You're okay with bringing more to the table. It may not appraise either. Are you okay with bringing more to the table? And then Jessica said, in the words of Jane Kelly as an agent, sometimes you need to just shut up and listen. I love it. I know we're talking about it a lot, but I think it's today.
We are a want, not a need. We cannot get our own box that we've put the market in the way. You will kill deals and you will piss people off. They will not work with you. So you're going to lose deals. And I know we feel like we're saving our clients, but in a market that's increasing like it is right now, you just don't know.
Jason, market-specific pricing. Help me remember that one. I know you had a really good point on that one. And it was kind of twofold, I think. One had to do with high end and one had to do with valuations, right? Justification.
Well, yeah. So just, we're talking a lot about the hot price points and multiple offers and things, but not the whole market's not like that, correct? So you get into some of those upper price points, and a little bit of it goes back to not just negotiation styles, but the personalities of who you're dealing with, what they're used to doing. So we were going to talk just a little bit about some of those high-priced homes whenever you go into that, something that's been maybe sitting on the market for a while, and everybody, again, wants the low ball. What are the conversations? And Mel, I think we were going to have you talk a little bit about this. How do you handle that with a buyer? A property's been on the market for a while. You okay with lowballing them? And then maybe speak to the sell side on that as well. A lot of people, I got lowballed. We don't want to counter. We want to counter. Are you unmuted?
You're muted, Melba.
There
she is. Look out now.
So the question is, if I have a buyer or a seller, which one first?
It doesn't matter. Whichever one you want to go to. I start with the buyer.
On a buyer, what I've started doing now in this market, I understand it's maybe been on the market 180 days, but you really like it, right? And they'll go, oh yeah, we really like it. Well, the reason you like it now is probably somebody else is going to like it too. So we can start low, but just understand it may end up biting us. I want a short response time, but get ready because that's what's happening. We've had right now in this market, properties have been sitting, but because of what's going on, we have more coming into the market, more people buying. So you may insult them to start out, and we might start it on the wrong foot. You may not end up with this house. So we need to kind of talk about it. Are you okay if you upset them and lose it? It may be better to look at giving them a better offer now. And you can have your stopping point. We can share where that's at, but maybe not go for the throat immediately because we might not end up buying anything today if we go that direction. If I have a seller, what I will tell them is, it's better than the offer you got yesterday. It's something to talk about. And I'll use the terminology of, they're just fishing. They're just wondering if you're going to bite. Ignore the price completely. Just ignore it. Let's just look at the terms. Will the terms do anything for you? Does this closing time work? It's a cash offer. That's pretty appealing. It's not contingent upon appraisal. So I'll try to have them focus on that and counter something. Give them something because they're trying to buy it. Everybody else didn't want your house. This one actually does. So just don't kick them in the face. Now, I've had sellers that absolutely won't do it. And you just go, well, we're probably dead in the water maybe.
Yeah, but can I share something little that you do, that I see you do, that I think is hilarious? Because I would never do it. I can remember watching you do this, where you're talking to somebody that it's one of the sellers you're representing. They have an offer that literally has insulted them. And they're on the other end of the phone saying, we're not even going to counter that. And I watch you, I don't even know if you realize you do it, but you go, no, we're not going to do that. No, we are going to counter. We're going to counter. And so I don't know if you realize it, but you just don't agree with them. And it's so funny because that's not my natural deal, but you won't let them is that right?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes they just need direction. It's gotten emotional suddenly. So as agents, they hire us to take the emotion out. Otherwise, we'd have for sale by owners and people doing it all the time. So it's, I think, our job to say, yeah, I know that's what you want to do, but that's not in your best interest. You hired me to help you. So let me do my job and help you. So yeah, we're going to counter, and it's okay. I always tell them over and over, it's okay. It's like talking to your kid, trying to teach them to ride a bike. Yep,
That's
we're
where
going
I
to
wanted-
fall, but it's okay.
That's where I wanted you to go, Mel. You do a great job of explaining to them, this is what you hired me for. Like, I know that you love this home. I love this home, but my job is to take the emotional out of it and to make sure that you get the most money in your pocket. And that's what you hired for me to do. And that's what you hired me to do. And that's what I'm going to help you do. And so this is what we need to do. I do this all the time.
Jason, real quickly, Karen had a question.
Thank you,
we'll
Jeff.
roll back just for a minute. Mel, will you answer that question while you're talking? Do you call the listing agent and ask if the amount of response time you want is appropriate? And I would assume that has to do with hot properties.
Yeah, it says
That's what you
hot.
said.
So.
For me, it depends on the agent. To know their personality, you know, because there's some that I know that are out there that they'll say, yeah, give me 2 days. And I know it's hot as heck and they are going to shop my offer. So that is one thing I would encourage us. I know the board meetings are boring. I know some of the socials are boring, but get to know the agents and their personalities, because you'll figure out who's going to shop your offer and who is actually sincere and telling you the honest, upfront truth. They're hard to get a hold of. Please give me 24 hours. But you need to learn those personalities. I typically don't ever give more than 24 hours, even if it's a slow property. People normally know what they're going to take. They have it in their mind what they're going to do. They can make a decision. And if not, you can be lenient and give them more time. But I don't ever give more than 24 hours, ever.
Well, and the reality is, even if they go past that time, they still have the opportunity to come back and,
Right.
you know, the deal's not necessarily done. Just maybe there's multiple people. Maybe there really is 3 or 4 people that have to make the decision. But even if you're outside your time frame, what's it going to hurt? I mean, at the end of the day, faster is better, especially on a hot property.
So you're saying go ahead and if they ask for 24 hours, but you know that there's probably going to be 3 more offers that come in that 24-hour period, are you saying go ahead and just give them 6 or 4? And then and tell the agent you just, or what, I mean, it seems like it does, it's hard to win. You know, it's hard, not win, bad word. It's hard to figure out what the best thing to do is for your client in those situations. Do you go ahead and send the short time and expect them to respond? Because if they don't, then you haven't gained anything anyway. Or do you go ahead and give them the 24 hours and hope that those other 3 offers don't come in? I mean, I struggle with that all the time when it's something that you know is going to get multiple offers quickly.
I again think shorter is better. I just don't, you know, at the end of the day, if they don't want to respond in that time, or they can't respond, if they truly can't respond in that time, then you're going to be in the same boat you would have if you would have given them more time.
I do too. I agree.
Super. Thanks, guys.
And could I add to it?
Yes, please.
To what I found, Karen, say it's 5 hours and you've heard nothing, and you ask for that response time and they're not calling you back, that's probably because they're getting other offers coming in. So that's where I have actually gone back to the client and said, listen, my gut tells me they're shopping our offer. They're waiting for more to come in. Now is the time you may want to up it again. I know we haven't heard an offer, but you may need to make the move now.
Okay, and I'm going to piggyback on that because there's a different, you know, and I'm not speaking to you, Karen. I'm just speaking to, you know, a person could put a short response time in really nicely, or an agent can put a short response time in very aggressively and threateningly. And so back to your negotiation styles, don't press somebody in a bully style. Does that make sense? Because that doesn't win anybody. If you get into a multiple offer situation, they don't have to respond. You're going to have you're going to have kind of a little black eye on yourself and your client because of how aggressive you might have went in. So, I mean, it's good to remember all of that. And there's no boilerplate. It's hard to figure out. Not every deal is the same. Not every agent is the same. So there is no perfect scenario every time, but we can do some of that faster paced stuff nicely as well and still be in a good spot if 3 offers come in.
You know, if that
I usually try to call and talk to the listing agent and kind of set that precedent, you know, that I don't want to rush you, but they're really excited about this property, and, you know, kind of give that feel. And
that's the best thing a person can do, I think. So we want to keep getting through our spots, because I really want to get to pitfalls if we can.
Yep. Appraisals, just be mindful of appraisals. We want to set the expectation with our buyers and our sellers at the beginning. Again, we don't want to wait until we're under contract. We want to be doing this before we ever get an offer, and before we ever write an offer, about it could come in high or it could come in low. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, you can always see I get so excited when you say something that I'm sorry, I do.
No.
Again, we were talking about this morning, you know, this is a negotiation class. You just hit the nail on the head. You're negotiating with the buyer and seller. Do you know we're negotiating with appraisers too? Mel met an appraiser at a house yesterday or 2 days ago, and she told me about the interaction. And she said, I met him there, and I had a chance to talk to him. He wasn't really happy about meeting him there, but when they got there, she had a chance to talk to him, and she said, man, this was a great deal. You just can't believe how great of a deal this was. Do you know, these people are getting, and I thought, what a great, Dennis Hansen.
Yeah.
Great example for me. He goes to that house early. He turns on the lights. He unlocks the door. He pulls the shades up. He makes it smell good. I mean, it's a negotiation. He's going to help that thing appraise.
And it's it takes some time to do that, but think about how far along you are by the time the appraisals, typically you're through inspections. It's like the last hurdle most of the time. And so to just not care or to not put any effort into it, if you're worried about it appraising, I love that Dennis does that. He shared that with us years ago, and I was like, man, that is dead on.
Every time an appraiser calls me, I go out of my way to send them comps, to send them market statistics, to have conversations with them about unique properties, because when something that has our name on it comes across their desk, I want them to think about that, because they do. And they think about, every sense of the way. So even when you have a hard deal with an appraiser, just remember they're struggling too. So, and you're negotiating. So.
Yep. Financing's part of this. That's just part of those terms of the contract. If your people don't have to get a loan, make it not contingent on financing. If it's in one of those hot properties, that doesn't mean they don't. Remember that just because you put it's not contingent on financing doesn't mean they can't get financing. There's lots of people that can pay cash that end up financing the property. So make sure you're talking with your buyers and your sellers about the importance of whether that's a contingency or not. Anything else you want to add on that?
Nope.
Extensions, timeframes, again, same thing. Make sure that this is a big one. We've already kind of hammered it. Make sure you're talking to the listing agent. What's the most important thing for them? Maybe it's not price. Maybe it's not whatever it is. Maybe it's time frame. Maybe they want a quick close. Maybe they want a drawn out close. Things like that can mean a lot to a buyer and a seller. So, and then we put extensions on here because extensions happen, right? And especially here, we saw a lot of that with the COVID-19. You want to speak to that, Jeff, on how you or Mel?
Yeah, Mel has you want to say anything about that, Mel? I just think about extensions and time frames. I think an agent can put themselves in a great position. So let's say you're representing a seller, and let's say you're coming up on a deadline, like an inspection notice. Do you just let that pass?
No. What I do, I think my negotiating style is more be nice and be kind. And it's kind of like the golden rule. we all get things going on. If you know that we're coming up on inspections and the buyer's agent hasn't gotten it to you yet, I call that other agent. I'm not going to leave them out to hang to dry, to dry there, because nobody wins. I mean, you're going to put a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So my style is not to go, ooh, he missed that date, I'm going to nail him for that. You're just going to tick everybody off and you're not going to get to closing. So who won there? Maybe my ego, but nothing else. So I put that aside and I want to work friendly to where I can go, hey, we're coming up on that. Do you have that? If not, you can use that automatic extension for, 3 or 4 days for the specialist report, but let's hold the deal together. Because if we blow it up right now, no one's going to win. We don't get paid. They don't sell their house. Your buyer doesn't get the house. This is not a win-win. You got to look for that.
That's good.
We
Hey,
have a
Tracy.
comment from Tracy. She said, I
Yeah.
get tripped up on offer and closing costs. How to sell closing costs to my buyer. She's like, sometimes I feel like agents are on leg time. That's a great point.
Sometimes they are, Tracy, and not every agent is the same. And so our suggestion on that one is sometimes you do have to make sure that you're watching for the other agent if it's going to negatively impact your client. So that's back to what Mel said, I think. That's not specific to your offer and closing costs, how to sell closing costs to my buyer. Can somebody else help with that? I don't understand that one completely, but I do feel like some agents, you do have to help them.
Are you saying, Tracy, that, sometimes your buyers want closing costs and the seller's not wanting to pay them, or?
Closing costs can be so expensive to my buyer.
Closing costs can be so expensive for a buyer. Well, I mean, obviously that can be one of the things that you put into the contract, talk to them, maybe they offer more. That can be a powerful tool where you get them to actually offer more, but then you ask for more in closing costs. A lot of times we see it where the seller will sometimes get it whacked in their head where, well, I'm not going to pay those closing costs. And you just have to find a way to get them to understand it's really not, it doesn't matter what you pay in closing costs. It's about what you're taking home. And so being able to either put it down on paper or, we're seeing deals that go for over ask, but yet there's closing costs involved. And at the end of the day, they're, the buyer's coming away with a little better deal because they don't have to come as much out of pocket. But
it's a great time to talk about, closing costs is usually involved with clients that are financing, and it's a great time to talk about how great the rates are and where their payment lines up with what they're able to buy, and sometimes that might help as well. But I think I understand what you're saying. Okay, common pitfalls. We wanted to share some of the things that we commonly hear. My disclosure is I don't mean to make any class that we have negative, but I do think it's good to hear what commonly gets agents in trouble as far as creating situations where through maybe non-intentional things, they are costing themselves and their clients deals. So the first one's quitting too quickly.
I'm done, Jeff. I'm done dealing with this person either because they're difficult or I'm done because, they lowballed us, whatever it is. How many times do we hear that? And how many times is it not true?
Let me tell you, there's a reason that one's the first one on the list, and it's because that was my go-to deal. Because of my personality, I just do everything I can until I get to the end. And for years, I would just quit. I had too much of the D side of me take over in stressful situations. And I would say, that's it. It's done. And Mel would run in and say, no, you're not. You're not done. Mel, you want to add to that at all?
Well, I think I mean, my personality is I'm not going to quit. I don't care if the other client or the other agent is very difficult to work with. Jane Kelly taught me a long time ago, nobody wins till you get the money. And the more of a jerk you are, the more I'm going to hang in there and get it done, because I win when I get their money. That hurts them more than anything. So I won't tell them I don't like them. I will walk away with my check and say, gotcha, and smile and say, thank you for the business.
I think that it's very easy in high pressure situations when one person says, that's it, the deal's over, to not hang it. The easy part is to not say anything or bow out or get emotional and mad. That's the easy road.
And sometimes it's your
is,
client that wants to quit, Jeff. Sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's your client, and it's your job to make sure that, first off, empathetic. You want to make sure that you hear what they're saying and let them know that you hear what they're saying. But then reiterate to them, this is why you hired me. I know this is hard. I know they're being difficult, but let's remember, this is where you want to remember their why. This is where you want them to know why you hired them, and your job is to get them to the finish line. We are so close. I know it feels like we've been through a lot, but if we give up now, we got to go through all those stupid showings again. We got to get another inspection. We've done all the hard part. We're so close. It's our job to make sure that we are that rock. When we talk about being the rock in these deals, this is a big part of it, because people just want to quit.
Jessica Bruce just called me a quitter. Coughing up commission here. We see agents every day in an inspection, in a close negotiation with price. If I just drop 1%, if I just take it they tend to cough up their own commission too easy to hold the deal together. So the reason we put that on there is that's a pitfall of negotiations that it's easy to get caught up in because we're feeling pressured. Get it done fast. That's a bad thing. So some points with that, if you look back on your commissions and your income, and you can identify that you were maybe doing a little bit of that negotiating too fast, the fix is time. You want to slow the process down. You want to find somebody else that you have to talk to. You want to say that you can't do that, even if you can. I have to talk to my broker. I have to talk to my team leader. I have to talk to my partner. You want to offer options. Let's not be naive. Sometimes we have to negotiate. But if I negotiate, I want the buyer to negotiate, the seller to negotiate, the other agent to negotiate, and me. So I just took a 50% cut and I cut it to 25. So there are ways to do that. And our time is getting so tight. Do you want to add to that, anybody, or can we move to the next one?
About 5 more minutes.
Let's go.
Yep. Emotion. Help me, guys.
So communicating emotion, the other side is bad. So we see this a lot with agents who will pit the other buyer or the other agent against their client. And so they're showing them in a bad light. And what that is doing is it's kind of building you're building one brick at a time, or you're taking a pebble at a time, and you just keep, maybe it's a little thing, but it's just kind of one at a time. And pretty soon you've got this guy or person who your client thinks is just an ass. And so they're done dealing with them. That's not how we don't ever want to, or rarely do we ever want to make the other side look like they're bad. We want to be empathetic. We want to, and it's a really delicate thing, because we want our client to understand that we've got their back, but at the same time, we want them to be able to see where they're coming from. Does that make sense? And I'm not.
People do it
eloquently, but
agents do it unintentionally, Jason. They say, God, I can't believe they asked for all this stuff. Well, whenever you do that, or, little things, you know, this is a really low offer. You know, they're not buying a new house. Little things that is, I can't believe that seller didn't counter us better. Anything little like that starts building a wall, and all of a sudden now you're negotiating a little bitty deal like a piece of furniture, and they think those people are jerks, and you see big deals go sideways and they cannot be resolved, and it's all because of emotion. It's not because of something that really should have killed a deal. So yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, if you can just say, hey, you know what, this happens all the time. This is how these negotiations usually happen. It's okay. That doesn't mean we have to give it to them, but it's okay that they're asking for it. And just let them kind of ease them that these people are not being ridiculous. They're not asking for something that's way out of there. That doesn't mean we have to give it to them. But again, we don't want to pit them and make them seem like they're a bad person.
Pet peeve of mine, my client.
Oh man.
My client will never accept that.
Speaking for clients is the worst. It makes me crazy. Is that where you're at?
I can tell you, yeah, Jason, I can tell you that the buyer is not going to pay that.
How about you ask them?
It sets a bad tone. It sets a bad tone for you. It puts you against the other agent. It's not it is, you are not the client. We are not the seller. We are not the buyer. We simply represent them. Please don't answer for them. It's a bad deal. And it happens to, you know, it can happen with great intention. And you might actually know because they might have actually told you, but that changes.
Yeah, everybody's motivation changes. When you speak quickly like that for your clients, it puts a really bad taste in the other agent's mouth. It makes you less credible. It puts you in a bad spot. It puts your client in a bad spot. We had a deal not too long ago, not with an agent here. Ethan was doing a deal, and the buyer and sellers actually knew each other, and the other agent didn't know it. And they were communicating behind their back. Ethan knew because it was one of his buddies.
Uh-oh.
And we would ask for something and it wouldn't get communicated. He would act like he was communicating. He didn't just speak for him, but he would come back and say, yeah, they won't do that. It made him look like a complete jackleg. And so this is just, it's unprofessional. It's
not our job
to do. Yeah.
Anyway. You can't, that one is really important.
Don't do that one.
Don't do it. Overprotecting, taking personal accountability. You know, we talked about that a little bit. You want to just touch on that?
Well, guys, just again, it's my buyer, it's my seller. I'm making sure, you know, they're a young couple. I got to make sure that they make a good investment. And there's some truth to that. We do want to make sure that they're making a good investment. But at the same time, if we're in a want, not a need, it kind of depends on the client. If it's something they really want, sometimes they're willing to pay more than what it's worth. We see it all the time in this market. So just be careful on that one. It's usually with good intentions, but it can.
Let me tell you a great little personal story on that one. My mom's cousin, we had sold two or three houses for him. Guy could afford anything he wanted. Told me he wanted a deal. Didn't want to spend over $450,000. This is a long time ago. It was a lot of money, a big deal. I listened to everything he said. I determined what a deal was for him. And I would only send him things that I thought was a deal. I called his office up one day and I said, hey, is Dwayne there? No, he's at the lake, at his new place at the lake. And I went, he's what? Yeah, he's at his new place at the lake. He drove down here, went to an open house on HH, paid $50,000 more than my criteria, bought something that was on the main channel. He told me absolutely not. Be careful over protecting. I know that doesn't fit within the terms of negotiation like we intended it to, but that is a trap that we fall into because we're told to do it. We do it out of good intention. And that I personally wanted to take care of him. And that was, I didn't know what he wanted, obviously. So anyway,
Hey, no, go ahead.
keep going.
I was just going to say paralysis by analysis. It's that agent that wants to make sure that they've read through the seller's disclosure. They've read through every terms of every single little T cross and I dotted. And again, it comes out of good intentions. It's not a bad thing to be educated, but there's a time where it's like, you'll have time to read through the seller's disclosure. We don't need to have every single document before we write an offer.
Yeah, but Jason, I want to protect my client. How can that hurt a client?
Or you can lose properties. It goes under contract. I mean, in this market, you better not be wasting any time. It also, a lot of times helps them. It causes, I think, them to focus on things that are not that important. You know, they're losing focus emotionally. They're losing focus on what they, you know, that they're in love with this property. We're in the market where they're down for the weekend. They're by this weekend. They go home. They may not come back.
Great point. I see great agents who are just more C-type personalities that want detail so bad because they want it for their clients. They want everything to be perfect.
I want the doc envelope. We got to make sure the doc envelope's right.
And they just kill themselves when they lose it, and they lose things without even realizing because they're trying to dot all the I's, cross all the T's prior. And the point that I want to make with this is exactly what you start off by saying. That's why contingencies are there. You don't even know if you can get something negotiated until you start the process. We can take care of the little stuff within a reasonable period of time after the contract's written. Determining value to client.
That kind of goes back along with what we talked about before. That was a really good kind of what you were sharing with. You know, we're playing appraiser. We're being that person that is determining what is important to them, what's of value to them, and we just honestly don't know in our market sometimes. So I think we've touched on anything specifically that you had in mind for that. Sorry.
No, well, I mean, how many times have one of you picked up, you know, answered a call from an agent, and the first thing they say is, "Can you justify this price for me?" How did you justify this? Can you please send me the comps that go along with this? And I do understand the train of thought, but you know, you got to be careful how far you take it on the buy side or the seller side. Especially in our market. I think this is one that's extremely challenging in today's market.
Hey, there's a lot of things we didn't get to as it pertains to this stuff. You know, one of the things that we had discussed at some point, we didn't get to it, is, you know, people who like to negotiate fast, people who like to negotiate slow. There's a time to slow down the negotiations. You get a certain personality. They want to go back and forth, you know, 4 or 5 times. There's other people that are just done, you know. Hey, there's people who are emotional. There are people who are numbers driven. You know, you get an emotional seller, emotional buyer, as opposed to somebody like, if you're negotiating with me and it's one of, like, for my own properties, like, I'm just never, it's just numbers. It's just like, I've got a number that I'll go to, and like, I don't care if they come in at 50%, like, I'm not going to get offended. But you got to, it kind of goes back to knowing your clients, knowing the other people's clients. Those are things we didn't get to talk about. And I don't know that we have time to get into all that, but.
Yeah, we kind of abused our time anyway, but we'll have another class about this. But I just think you're right. There's so much more to talk about it. You know, into those, we could tap into being a chameleon more, as far as being a chameleon with respect to your own client. You know, figuring out how they like to communicate and what speed and pace and body language to use. There's a lot, but I appreciate everybody coming. I know we kind of abused our time a little bit, but this is a tough one because it's so important and there's so many things to consider.
Hey, don't forget, take some time and do some self-evaluating. I'll go back to what we challenged you guys with right at the beginning. Find somebody you trust. Ask them where your blind spots are. Where do you see me? Where can I improve on this? Because I guarantee all of us have room to improve on this stuff. So
We hope your next deal is the smoothest deal yet.
they're all easy, Jeff. What are
They're
you
all
talking
easy.
about? Deals are easy. People are easy. Sheesh. Hey, appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for taking the time. We're in awe of how much you guys value being learning based and how you guys are always looking. We have the best agents in the country, and yet here you guys are learning, and you guys never stop. We talk about that often, so you have no idea how much we appreciate you guys.
It's going to be 80 degrees today.